This video is for those Ukrainians who are in Canada on temporary resident status. On February 27th, 2025, Immigration Canada announced that they will be extending the deadline for Ukrainians to apply for status extension. So previous deadline was March 31st, 2025. That deadline has been officially extended to March 31st, 2026 for Ukrainians who arrived in Canada before March 31st, 2024. So those people can apply to extend their work permit or study permit from within Canada and get an open work permit for up to 3 years, provided that their biometrics and passports remain valid. Whether it needs to be whether you need to apply now or whether you can wait until the new deadline, it's really up to you, and it depends on whether your status is expiring soon. You have to submit a new application before your current status expires. So that means before your current work permit expires. You don't have to have a valid visa to remain in Canada. Visa in your passport, you only need that in order to enter Canada. So if you're traveling outside, in order to return to Canada, you will have to have a valid visa in your passport. But if your visa expired and you're not planning to travel outside the country, you don't really have to have it, but you have to have a valid work permit, study permit, or a visitor record in order to remain in Canada legally. You cannot apply to extend your work permit and get a visa in your passport at the same time within one application. These are two separate applications. It makes sense to first apply for a new work permit, then get a new work permit with a new end date, and then apply to get a visa fixed in your passport. If you got a new passport after you arrived in Canada and applying for a work permit extension, I think you can just apply with a new passport. There's no need to upload your previous passport. You have a UCI, unique client identifier number, so if your new passport is if your name hasn't changed, you can just use your new passport for your new work permit application. Whether you need to apply from one portal and include all the family members, or if you want to make separate profiles for them, it's really up to your family needs. There's no requirement to apply together as a family, and it's also not guaranteed that all of the applications will be considered and processed at the same time. There could still be different timelines for each family member. Do you need to add medical exam results, even if you completed your medical exam longer than 12 months ago? I would recommend adding them. You can add in the client information section. You did not get a full medical report from the doctor. You would only get 1 or 2 pages that have your photo and IME number, and that's the number that identifies your medical exam results in the system. So that's what you need to upload to confirm your medical exam results. And there is a temporary policy right now that allows for medical exams to be valid for longer than 12 months, for up to 5 years, but it is up to the discretion of IRCC, which for you means that if immigration is asking you to do a new medical exam, you have to do it. You can't ignore that request. If you get any requests from IRCC, you should respond to it in time. Otherwise, it gives them a reason to cancel your application. A lot of men are getting additional requests about your military service. Read the request carefully. It's not asking whether you are whether you're obligated to serve in the army now. It's asking you, it's saying that military service is mandatory for men ages 18 to 27 in Ukraine. If you completed military service at the time you were between 18 and 27, then please provide additional details. If you didn't complete that service, please explain why. So you would have to explain what kind of exemption you qualified under at that time. It's not asking you about how you were able to leave Ukraine or what's happening with your military, whether you're registered with Reserve Plus, or like what's ultimately happening with your military obligations right now. Can you apply for a work permit for a dependent child? It depends on their age. Children over 14 are qualified to get an open work permit under CUAET policy. Do you need to do a new biometrics? Not necessarily. Biometrics should still be valid if you've done it in the last 10 years, but in some situations you wouldn't you wouldn't have it on file anymore. So if IRCC is asking you to do a new biometrics, please don't ignore that request. And also it's relevant for the kids. If your kid came here before the age of 14, they wouldn't have been doing biometrics at that time. But now if they're over 14, they will be asked to do new biometrics. Can you apply for a new work permit if you've applied 2 or 3 times before? Technically you can. There's no limit on how many times you can apply, but remember it's up to the discretion of IRCC whether to grant you a new work permit. They will see in the system whether your current work permit is valid, and final decision rests with them. Can you apply for a work permit and then leave Canada? There is no restrictions on leaving Canada, but you will get a letter after you apply for a work permit. You'll get a letter. It's automatically generated in your portal, and it says that you have a certain amount of time, it's 6 months, to remain in Canada and continue working and have maintained status while your application is being processed. In that letter, it says, do not leave Canada, otherwise this letter will stop working. So essentially you will lose your maintained status. And if you're in a situation that your previous work permit is expiring soon or already expired, this letter allows you to continue working in Canada. But if you leave and come back to Canada, you will come back as a visitor and will have to wait for your new work permit application to be processed before you can resume work. If your work permit is valid for another 5 or 6 months and you already applied for a new work permit, then I think it may be safe to leave and come back before your current work permit is processed. Can you get a work permit without a valid passport? Immigration did say that they will process cases on a case-by-case basis. They did say to explain your efforts to get a new passport or get a passport extension and submit your new passport as soon as you're able to. It's very unlikely that you will get a work permit without valid passport. You can ask immigration not to process your application right away and give you a little bit more time to sort out the passport issue, but it's unlikely that they will issue a new work permit without the new passport altogether. So if you are in a situation where you cannot extend the validity of your passport or cannot get a new one, you will have to look at the process of applying for a temporary resident permit. If you entered Canada on a single journey travel document, if you didn't have a passport at the time you entered Canada and then obtained a passport in Canada, most likely at the time when you were entering Canada for the first time, immigration issued you a temporary resident permit. It's called TRP, temporary resident permit. If that's your case, then you will most likely have to apply for another TRP. You will not be able to just extend your work permit online. You will have to submit a paper-based application for a TRP. And in that application, you can ask for a new TRP that's valid up to another 3 years, or you can ask to remove this TRP status off of your file, so then they could just issue a new work permit. But either way, it's a little bit more complicated. So I hope that answers most of your questions. If you still have any questions left, please, you can contact me at Pro Bono Ontario. The phone number is 1-877-873-7875. My name is Olya Sanishin, and I'm an immigration lawyer. Thank you for watching the video, and best of luck to you all.